Thanks, Don. No, you haven't stolen some of the talk. You've stolen all of it. So thanks, everybody, and I'll see you next year.
Earlier than
No, thank you. So hi, everybody. Thanks for giving me the chance to talk, hopefully fairly briefly, about the work that I have been doing with Don and Merrin on redeveloping the Helm materials for interactive online use. So as Don mentioned, the Helm Consortium set up this project of developing what was originally 50 PDF booklets. Helm, by the way, stands for Helping Engineers Learn Mathematics. They had funding to do this. There were initially 5 universities involved: Loughborough, Hull, Reading, Sunderland and Manchester. And then since the early to mid 2000s, when this work begun, it took them 3 years to complete the creation of all of the PDF booklets. But once that work was done, then there was some other funding around for dissemination and care of a whole range of sort of institutional partnerships. There were several other dozens of other universities, mostly in the UK, involved in refinement and editing. So the end result of all of this work is a very comprehensive set of engineering mathematics resources targeted at first and second year level that have been thoroughly worked over from a sort of a curation and from just a copy editing point of view. So I kind of got interested. I'd known about these resources care of some discussions with Don, and I got interested in squeezing my way into the work that he's been doing with Merrin, because for other purposes I've been using this Sphinx online documentation generation system, which is really great, and I thought it would be an excellent fit for taking the University of Bath generated HTML content and doing something a bit different with it. So that's how Helm began, and that's how I got involved. So as I mentioned, Helm has, since its sort of birth, this project in the early 2000s, it's kind of blossomed out into many different directions. And there are a couple of project teams now, 3 actually, project teams now interested in redeveloping the resources, the Helm resources, for online use. So as Don mentioned, University of Bath has just done basically a PDF to HTML conversion. And I'll see if this works here. And that looks like this. So this is the Bath resources, which are already pretty clean. And the University of Edinburgh are also involved. They're taking things a step further than Bath, and they're looking to interweave Moodle-based quizzes and stack questions into a web page, a website, should I say? And they're also exploring the use of another online textbook generation system called Pretext as a platform for open deployment of Helm. So the Australian team, as I'm calling it, it involves two universities, as far as I know. Please correct me if I'm wrong here, Merrin or Don. But Western Sydney Uni and now UNSW under the auspices of FIR Maths. And our purpose our aim is to take the Bath HTML content and jazz it up, basically. First of all, to make the content more manageable from an editing point of view. So to take the HTML files and convert them into another format, which I'll talk about in a moment, to make the editing more manageable. But then in the process to also reimagine the design a little bit, thinking that students will be interacting with the content, possibly in different ways to how the Helm Consortium might have believed they would interact with them in their original form as PDFs. So just for a little bit of reference here, this is an example of an original PDF booklet. This is very comprehensive. It's got 94 pages. So this is sort of one of, one ended up being 46 chapters with 4 other chapters that weren't strictly sort of content related, involving case studies and other things. And you can see, if we go to page 6, I think it is at this, yep, you can see that it's all very well presented, well organized, nice, clean, vector-based copy. So that's PDF. When that is translated to HTML as a, if you're looking at the HTML markup, and this is what Merrin and Don have been wrangling with. It's pretty opaque, and Merrin has advised that it can take her literally half an hour to sort of dig through all of this HTML content to insert elements such as numbers questions. So this is pretty undesirable to work with this as our raw content from an editing point of view. The same content, when converted to the markup that the Sphinx system uses, which is called restructured text, looks much more human readable. So that's an example there of the same content as in that HTML file. So I hope that I've managed to convince Merrin and Don that once we overcome all of the pain and suffering involved in converting from that Bath HTML to RST, restructured text, that from that point forward, the editing and sort of refinement and modification process will be a lot easier. In terms of the Australian team's contribution, as I mentioned, Merrin and Don are leading an effort to embed numbers questions into the Helm content. But this is slow going. It's very fiddly. And so I thought that there might be a better way. And this is still a little bit of work in progress, but I think I'm certainly convinced that RST is going to be much easier to work with than raw HTML. So it's this sort of content here, the HTML from Bath, that we've been able to convert into RST, but the RST has been generated by a range of different processes. The main conversion was done by a system called Pandoc. So that's from HTML to RST. Then I've used Python scripts many of which have been written for me or partially written for me by GPT-4, to then clean the Pandoc converted files, RST files, which were actually pretty messy, in their raw form. So I've had a very difficult relationship with GPT-4 over the last 2 or 3 weeks. We've been enemies, then we've been friends. We've had we actually had a long sort of period of separation. Then we got back together. So it's been a very difficult relationship with GPT-4. But I'm pleased to report to you that as of today, we're on very good terms. So the Sphinx system, it is pretty stable and robust. It is a system that was originally developed in 2008 to build online documentation for the Python programming language. So the whole thing's written in Python. I should say that there are dozens of, more than dozens, there's probably hundreds. I've certainly seen dozens of systems that act in a very similar way to the Sphinx system in taking a bunch of plain text files and converting them into a website for documentation purposes or for creation of online technical books, etc. So Sphinx is one of many, but it's one of the main ones. It's got a huge user community. It's very well written software, and it produces websites like this. So just for fun, I wrote this talk in Sphinx. So you're seeing an example of the output of Sphinx as a website here. So there are 2 key markup formats used by the Sphinx system to generate documentation. In our case, we're thinking less of documentation and more of online website or online book. Online book. So the 2 formats are restructured text and MyST Markdown. So we've chosen restructured text just because it's more generic and it's a little bit easier to read actually than MyST Markdown. So Sphinx is really well suited to, as I say here, the preparation of content that's heavy in maths detail. And it's got excellent support for text search, cross-referencing and site navigation as well. Because it's got such a big user community, which is populated by a lot of Py devs, I think they're called, Python developers, the nerdy people who love using Python to extend existing systems. There are lots of extensions and widgets that are out there that can be easily plugged into the Sphinx system to make it do lots of fancy things that the base version, the version that you take off the shelf, can't do. So, for example, just quickly going back here, these sorts of toggleable boxes, the inclusion of a PDF document and so on. This is all care of extensions to the system. You can't do that kind of thing with the base system. So our redevelopment work, 2 of the main tasks, I initially said that the task is twofold, but I thought that was a bit bold. 2 of the main tasks, as I see them, are augmenting the existing rich and very well curated online lessons and exercises with interactive elements. So what I mean by interactive elements is basically inclusion of numbers questions and inclusion of JSX graph visualizations And maybe some other elements that we haven't thought of. Animations might be an example. Any kind of element that would enable the student to have an individual engagement with the resources. Along the way, Don and I have been talking a little bit about this Sphinx conversion process. And we've realized that students probably will, if we provide a version of these resources in this kind of format, students will probably be interacting with those resources differently to the way they would if they had a bunch of PDFs. So, for example, they might only be interested in Fourier series, or they might only be interested in vector geometry. And so, the Sphinx generated website would allow them very easily to, use the powerful search functionality that's kind of built into the back end of the Sphinx system to find what they need. All right, so this is what, I'll just quickly go to this. This is what we've sort of come up with so far. It's very, very crude. You can see that actually the format I'm using here, the theme, sorry, I'm using here is just the sort of standard Sphinx book theme, it's called. But the theme I'm using for my talk is a more fancy theme. Personally, I prefer this theme, but this is just an example of how you can choose a different theme, recompile, and you have a totally different look and feel for your website in a matter of seconds. So just to come back here, so this is personally, I don't like the style of this. I think laying out the table of contents like that is in that kind of vertical linear way is a bit unattractive. But anyway, this is sort of progress we've made so far. I've only worked on section 1.1 in terms of editing some of the restructured text files. But you can see that it corresponds pretty closely to the bath content. But along the way, we've made a few design changes. I should say the bath content for reference is here. And so what we're looking at is this for the bath content, calculation with numbers. This is our version of it, calculation with numbers. Bath are using green boxes for highlighted content. We're using what are called admonitions in the Sphinx system. Same sort of idea. Okay, so coming back to the main thread. Sorry. Yeah. So that's the work that's just begun, actually. It will be an enormous undertaking to dig into each of the 825, roughly, RST files that are now sitting in the source directory of this project that Sphinx is using to turn into the Helm website. And when I say dig into them, the main task is copy editing and then also inclusion of new elements, new content, particularly numbers questions and JSX graph visualizations for enhancement. So I think that it would be an almost insurmountable task if it were just Merrin, Don, and myself working on this. The good news is that this content is so rich and so well organized and so well written, in my view, that it really is worth a big commitment. If we can get this into, if we can convert this into a beautiful, clean, fresh, easily navigable website, then I think we will have done our community a big service. So I personally believe that there is going to be reward in the effort. The challenge is to get enough people involved to be able to get the work done, get the job done. So that's all a very long way of saying we'd love your help, and if you would like to learn more, not necessarily commit yourself, but just to learn more, have a conversation, please connect with me, Marin or Don. And I think someone's got their mic on. Please connect with me, Marin or Don, and we can take it from there. I might say that using the RST markup is takes a little bit of getting used to. It's not something you can just kind of jump into without a bit of guidance. So I think that I haven't discussed this with Don and Marin, but I think that if others were interested in getting involved, then I would happily run a workshop. It would only take a couple of hours to set you up. It's lightweight markup, so it's not terribly hard to get your head around. But it would take probably 1 or 2 hours just to get you up to speed in using the markup, and that's really all you would need to be doing. You'd need to be interacting with the plain text files so that I could do the compilation into the website via Sphinx. Anyway, thank you. That's all I have.